One of the things to look at, first of all, is that we've been living with the Human Rights Act for nearly 22 years. So it's something that's very intrinsic in everyday life. And of course, in any type of legislation, you're going to get absurd cases. You've mentioned just a few of the cases that we've seen under the Human Rights Act come up. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't been effective. And it's not been, it certainly has, as far as I'm concerned, been one of the most, if not the most important protection of human rights legislation we've ever had in this country.
But on the point about Strasbourg, you can see why that had a corrosive effect. The idea of, and maybe you can tell me why we never found out who the judge was in Strasbourg from the ECHR who made this ruling on the Rwanda flight. But people, you can understand why people are baffled by that. We have a Supreme Court. The clue's in the name. You would assume that people appeal and they appeal and they appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court, only to find out it's not that supreme, actually.
I think that's something that it's nothing new in our our court system. The human rights, the European Court of Human Rights has been something that's been there, and our part of it has been there for a very long time, since just after the Second World War. So it's not something new. It's not something that should surprise anyone. And I think the timing of the announcements that we saw of the Rwanda policy last week, the extradition of Assange, and then the introduction of the Bill of Rights now, when it's something that's been discussed for over a decade, I think is very, very, very suspicious. But it's certainly something that isn't new. Now, I do agree with you. If you have a court in this country, that many people will consider, why is a court in Europe having supremacy over that? I understand that argument.
Themes and topics together. We're told that the Bill of Rights will also enshrine rights to free speech. I mean, personally, and I think I speak for many on this news channel, that's to be welcomed. How you codify it, I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, that's something that is in existence already. You already have the Human Rights Act for however long that may remain. That already has protections of free speech and freedom of expression in there. And it's certainly an interesting time for them to push forward with like I said, the Bill of Rights. We only saw a few days ago them confirming, Priti Patel confirming her approval of the extradition of Julian Assange. One of his defences is that his acts were part of free speech. Yet we're told at the same time the Bill of Rights will improve free speech. So the two don't really kind of sit very well together. So I think the devil will be in the detail. We've seen the bill today, we've seen the text of it, but it's certainly, in my view, something that is essentially constitutional butchery of the existing human rights regime, and one that I think is not welcomed by any of the relevant groups. If you look at the human rights organisations, they're not understandably welcome it. But if you also look at the lawyers, look at the president of the Law Society, she also has said that it's not something that is supported.